First at 9 this Sunday, the 16th of March 2025. Lanka denial. Former President Ranil Wickremesinghe dismisses the Batalanda Commission report completely. Yet Parliament gears up for a two-day debate on the matter in the coming months. End the stall. Simply rejecting Geneva resolutions will not solve the crisis. Meaningful dialogue is the way forward, urges former Foreign Secretary.
And come to some kind of understanding as to what we can do to conclude this.
The dollar surge. Sri Lanka rakes in over $360 million from tourism in February, pushing the two-month total to a whopping $768 million. The strike wave. Postal and telecommunication unions launch a 48-hour token strike over several key demands. Healthcare professionals to follow suit with their own strikes starting tomorrow.
Chilo Dairy, Sri Lankawama Kiren Perata. ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
කණ්ඩ පරිස්සම් කරගත්තොත් අපි පරිස්සම්.
ඉතින් මොකටද නිකන් නාගන්නේ? ස්වදේශී කොහොඹ ලෙමන් ග්‍රාස් අද කාලෙට ෆ්‍රෙෂ්ම විසඳුම.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to Derana First at 9. I am Aditya Singh joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. Brought to you by the only Sri Lankan media network to rise to the pinnacle across all media platforms. Recognized as the best by every survey and beloved by the people. Now in a top story tonight, in a blanket denial of the Batalanda Commission report today, former President Ranil Wickremesinghe maintains his innocence over the atrocities committed in the Batalanda housing complex, which include murder, unlawful detention and torture. The former president's denial comes hot off the heels of heated public and political discourse of the horrors of Batalanda, dragged into the limelight through Al Jazeera's recent interview with Ranil Wickremesinghe. Meanwhile, Minister of Health and Mass Media Dr. Nalinda Jayatissa revealed that the Batalanda Commission report will be debated in Parliament on the 10th of April and on a later date in May as well. Upon assuming power in 1994, former President Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumaratunga sanctioned a commission report on the atrocities committed within the Batalanda housing complex in Biyagama. The alleged atrocities include extrajudicial killings, torture and unlawful detention. The Commission of Inquiry tasked with probing the Batalanda controversy identified several individuals directly and indirectly responsible for the atrocities, with former President Ranil Wickremesinghe being among those implicated as such. The Commission of Inquiry tasked with probing the Batalanda controversy identified several individuals directly and indirectly responsible for the atrocities, with former President Ranil Wickremesinghe being among those implicated as such. Although the final draft of the report was officially handed over to former President Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumaratunga on the 5th of May 1998, legal action against those responsible was never instituted. Several decades later, the atrocities committed in Batalanda re-entered the limelight off the back of a recent edition of Al Jazeera's head-to-head interview series, which featured Ranil Wickremesinghe. With the Batalanda Commission report being the subject of extremely heated public discourse, several pressure groups lobbied the incumbent government to table the report in Parliament. Consequently, the incumbent cabinet granted the necessary approval, prompting Leader of the House Bimal Ratnayaka to officially table the report in Parliament on the 14th of March. According to the Committee on Parliamentary Affairs, the Batalanda Commission report is expected to be tabled in Parliament on the 10th of April and later on a date in May as well. We have decided to issue this report to the Attorney General. We have also reserved 2 days to debate this matter, with the first day being the 10th of April. The UNP and those backing Sajith Premadasa didn't want this matter to be taken up in Parliament. In the interest of democracy, however, we will hold this debate. Against this backdrop, former President Ranil Wickremesinghe, who is implicated in the report, issued a special statement today denying responsibility and completely rejecting the Batalanda Commission report.
1987 වර්ෂයේදී ඉන්දු ලංකා ගිවිසුම අත්සන් කිරීමෙන් පසුව
Off the back of the Lanka peace accords in 1980, the JVP spread terror nationwide. Given this political context, former President J.R. Jayawardena vested in the Cabinet of Ministers the power to protect sites of national interest. Since the Begama commercial zone was home to an oil refinery, a diesel-powered electricity generating facility and a transmission hub which disseminated electricity from Mahaweli to Colombo, the area had extreme commercial importance. Since these public infrastructure facilities were important, the military was deployed to ensure its security. Consequently, a decision was taken to provide housing units to accommodate servicemen under a housing scheme of the State Fertilizer Manufacturing Corporation. At the time, several officials of the CEB were residing within certain housing units at the scheme in question. During this reign of terror, the OIC of the Sapugaskanda police station was assassinated. Subsequently, the then Deputy Minister of Defence, Ranjan Wijeratne, talked to me to reserve a few housing units at the housing scheme in Batalanda to accommodate army servicemen and police officers. Therefore, relevant state officials took steps to hand over a few empty housing units to the then police superintendent of the Kalaniya division, Nalin Delgoda. During this time, several individuals, including a local government councillor, a cooperative service member and a police sergeant, were murdered. Along with this, another local government councillor's residence was attacked. Meanwhile, the government took steps necessary to restore order within the chaos and to instill economic stability while ensuring peace and national security. Upon assuming power in 1994, former President Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumaratunga sanctioned a commission to probe an alleged torture chamber being operated in Batalanda. Several individuals were summoned before this commission. I was summoned before this commission only as a witness. At that point in time, I served as the leader of the opposition. The Batalanda Commission was set up with the sole intention of politically defaming me. However, that attempt was not successful. The recommendations of the commission claim that it was improper for me to provide housing units to a police officer directly as a minister. The proper protocol should have been to hand over housing units to the Inspector General of the Police, who would have then handed down those residences to the relevant officers. The commission report asserts that I and Nalin Delgoda are indirectly responsible over the Batalanda atrocities since we did not follow that proper protocol. No other fact mentioned in the commission report relates to me. Several acts of terror committed by the JVP between 1988 and 1990 have been highlighted in the Batalanda Commission report. Even the political background of those acts are described. Severe acts of terror perpetrated by the JVP are extensively documented in paragraph 3 of the Batalanda Commission report. None of the other accusations, apart from those I mentioned here, relate to me. I completely reject this report. No one can say that the Batalanda Commission report was concealed. It was available as a parliamentary session report even in the year 2000. However, no one requested a debate over this matter. Even the JVP didn't request a debate on it. Many didn't even accept the report. Therefore, we can say that no steps were taken to debate this matter in parliament. I must say that no political party that assumed power since then tried to score political points off this report. Furthermore, there is no parliamentary tradition here or elsewhere in the world of debating a parliamentary session report 25 years later.
අවුරුදු 25කින් පසුව පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ විවාද කිරීමේ කිසිම සම්ප්‍රදායක් මේ රටේ අනික් පාර්ලිමේන්තුවලවත් නැහැ.
Now, with Batalanda dominating political discourse today as well, let's take a look at what public representatives had to say about the Batalanda houses of horror. The Presidential Committee to probe the Batalanda Detention Centre was established by then President Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumaratunga. Although the report had been compiled by the relevant committee and was submitted to the President, it had been hidden away at the Presidential Secretariat for years. We will not hesitate to take legal action against the rogue politicians who seized power through democratic means and then decimated the nation. In 2015, during former President Maithripala Sirisena's tenure, incumbent President Dissanayake closely associated former President Ranil Wickremesinghe. Why didn't he bring this matter up back then? Similarly, a number of murders and destructions of property occurred during the JVP insurrection as well. I am sure there are reports on those killings as well. In my opinion, those reports should also be brought to public attention. First of all, either a report should be presented or a commission should be established to look into the murders carried out by the JVP during the past. We will not allow them to use the Batalanda controversy to undermine the damage caused by the JVP. Without a doubt, President unrest and former President Ranil Wickremesinghe conspired to create this drama. They are attempting to bring this issue to public attention by holding a debate in Parliament. Former President Ranil Wickremesinghe will thereafter be acquitted of all charges related to the Batalanda controversy on legal technicalities, preventing further legal action. Innocent lives of at least 60,000 youth were claimed by the horrors of Batalanda, which were committed by several powerful public representatives, including former President Ranil Wickremesinghe. All criminals involved in the Batalanda controversy, not just Wickremesinghe, will face legal repercussions. Since the relevant report was not compiled by a special presidential commission, the government will not be able to use it to pursue legal action against individuals accountable for the atrocities of Batalanda. Even the JVP held detention centers. They are also accountable for killing people. Justice should be served for all the murders which were carried out in the country. They should not be restricted to a single party. However, President Anradisa will neither arrest nor implement legal action against former President Ranil Wickremesinghe.
ප්‍රජා අයිතිය හවුසි කරන්න හෝ ඔහුට දඬුවම් කරන්න හෝ ඉදිරිපත් වෙන්නේ නැත.
පිරිපුන් ජීවිතයකට ඔබ සමගින් පෙරට Union Assurance. චන්දුරුසුමේ කාගෙන් බලා සිංහ TV සඳහා සුපිරි ඩීල්.
Don't waste time. Start your degree with pending A-level results this February with our partner universities. Call ACBT on 0117 699 499.
Former Foreign Secretary Prasad Karyavasam, addressing resolutions against Sri Lanka at the Geneva Convention, clarified that most allegations were not directed at the entire security forces of Sri Lanka, but rather target specific individuals or certain units. He also emphasized that Sri Lanka had pledged to implement the 13th Amendment to the Constitution when it co-sponsored a resolution in 2009. However, the country has since failed to fulfill that commitment. Karyavasam pointed out that merely rejecting resolutions will not resolve the issue. Instead, he advises the current government to engage in discussions with the sponsors of the resolution in Geneva and to work towards a resolution to avoid prolonging the matter.
These resolutions that were sponsored against Sri Lanka, you earlier mentioned that this was an issue that Sri Lanka could have settled earlier. And these resolutions, as a democracy, do you think Sri Lanka has handled this situation well?
Resolutions that take place in Human Rights Council in Geneva are not made in Geneva. Geneva is only the theatre. It's an expression of various countries who are sponsoring, peddling the resolution. Their national positions are reflected in these resolutions. Now we have had series of resolutions about Sri Lanka since 2009, and out of the two resolutions Sri Lanka sponsored. 2009 resolution, Sri Lanka sponsored one. In 2016 there's Sri Lanka co-sponsored resolution. So there is no one clear strand in this process. What is clear is only one thing. There was concern mainly from the Western countries rising out of the pressure they receive in democratic way in their own countries to make Sri Lanka accountable for alleged crimes committed during the and after the war. Many in the international community give a lot of credit for Sri Lankan security forces to the manner in which they conducted this conflict and concluded it. They think Sri Lankan security forces are a professional, outfit, capable set of people. But at the same time, there are allegations against some individuals, some sections of the security forces for rights violations, which we still have the allegations. 2009 resolution, Sri Lanka promised to the international community that we will implement the 13th Amendment. It is that first time Sri Lanka gave an international guarantee in a resolution sponsored by us that we will implement the 13th Amendment. We haven't done that. Then 2016 resolution, which we co-sponsored, Sri Lanka's effort was to bring the discussion of the whole issue to Sri Lanka and promise we are going to set up local domestic mechanisms to address all the issues. We have only gone halfway on that. But then after some time, I think governments changed and that resolution was rejected by Sri Lanka. When there is no resolution of these allegations, issue doesn't go away. Issues remains in the table. Allegations, unless it is resolved locally, will remain always on the table. It is not a good situation for Sri Lanka to be. So Sri Lanka is now rejecting that resolution. This time also, I think this government also rejected the resolution. But in the long term, in my view, just rejecting won't take the issue go away.
13th Amendment, a political solution. Let's put that aside for now. But apart from the mechanisms to everything, what can this government do now?
This government has an opportunity as we go along. Although this government now rejected the resolution, this government has an opportunity when it comes to next October, is the resolution is coming up for renewal, to have a conversation with the main sponsors, main core group of sponsors who are sponsoring this resolution on Sri Lanka, and come to some kind of understanding as to what we can do to conclude this. And we have now gone halfway. The Office of Missing Persons is there. We have to make it very vibrant, very agile. We have Office of Reparations. It's set up. Truth and Reconciliation Commission, not yet. And then government idea of having an independent prosecutor is another good idea where we can fit in that into this and talk to the sponsors and come to an understanding of a path that we will take to resolve this issue. Actually, security forces are also victims. I mentioned of security force as a whole has a good reputation. There are a lot of opportunities for them. But the fact that this issue has not been resolved is militating against more opportunities for Sri Lankan security forces to go and work in the international arena as peacekeepers. Sri Lanka is a democratic nation who should show that we are accountable, transparent. We can have a conversation with those who are putting pressure on Sri Lanka to do those things and find a method that will be acceptable by victims and everybody. It is not that difficult.
Now in other local news, the Criminal Investigation Department has recorded statements from the spouse and son of the suspended Inspector General of Police, Deshabandhu Tennakone. The statements were recorded yesterday at the now missing IGP's residence in Hokandara. Despite arrest warrants being issued by the Matara Magistrates Court to arrest Tennakone over a shooting incident carried out in 2023 near a hotel in Valigama, the authorities have not yet been able to locate him. During the interrogation, his spouse and son stated that they do not know his whereabouts. Meanwhile, the Police Media Division stated that an agreement has been reached between the Attorney General and the IGP Deshabandhu Tennakone's attorneys over the relevant incident. Based on the agreement reached, the Attorney General has directed the CID not to arrest the officer in charge of the Colombo Crimes Division and 5 other individuals except for Deshabandhu Tennakone. In the meantime, the Court of Appeal is slated to deliver its order on the petition filed by Tennakone via his attorneys, seeking an order preventing his arrest.
Fast track your career from O-levels with eSoft.
ඩයිබටසෝල් සීනිවලින් පරිස්සම්වන ඔබට අමතක නොවන පෝෂණය.
කැලනි වයර් කිසිගින්නක් නෑ.
කිසිගින්නක් නෑ. කැලනි Fire Shield Wire.
Now, a 48-hour token strike was staged today by the Postal and Telecommunication Officers Union and the United Postal Trade Unions Front over 7 crucial demands specific to the Department of Posts. Meanwhile, the Government Nurses Association and the Federation of Health Professionals is also stated to announce the staging of token strikes tomorrow and the day after. Telecommunication Officers Union and the United Postal Trade Unions Front commenced a 48-hour token strike today at 4 p.m. The token strike was announced over 7 key issues, including filling vacancies in the Department of Posts, approval of the Postal Service Constitution, and providing the prescribed overtime allowances. Since 2018, officers have not been recruited properly for the outstanding vacancies for over 7 years. With over 7,500 vacancies still outstanding, the department struggles to perform its daily operations. In some areas, mail is delivered only once in 2 days. This strike will be in effect on the 17th and 18th as well. However, if a feasible solution is not tendered, we will have to go further and institute a much more serious union action. In the meantime, the Government Nurses Association is also scheduled to commence a 3-hour token strike from 8:30 a.m. tomorrow in protest of the reduction of nurses' allowances through this year's budget. The reason for this strike is very clear. On one hand, the budget depicted salary increments to doctors, paramedics and allied health professionals, while reducing allowances on the other hand. We request the government to reinstate the now reduced allowances and promotions through a parliamentary resolution. If the government fails to do so, they will not be able to stop this union action. Against this backdrop, the Federation of Health Professionals also announced a strike action expected to commence on the 18th of March from 8 a.m. onwards. Our request is not new. During the government of former President J.R. Jayawardena, we fought and secured the 1/20th extra duty allowance. The incumbent government has now reduced this allowance, which we enjoyed for the last 40 years. Please reinstate the reduced allowances. We don't want anything new. The Postal and Telecommunication
of the
Office
Sarvajana Balaya parliamentarian Dilith Jayavira deems it necessary to look at cinnamon innovatively with an entrepreneurial attitude to realize the full profit-generating potential of Sri Lanka's prized crop. Addressing a gathering in Galle, Jayavira went on to claim that every state that paved its way towards development did so by embracing the concept of an entrepreneurial state.
The Dangahavila Karandini divisional meeting of the Sarvajana Balaya was held yesterday, aimed at securing victory in the upcoming local government election. The meeting was held under the patronage of party leader parliamentarian Dilith Jayavira. Cinnamon is a resource gifted to us naturally. Cinnamon is among the top 10 opportunities which Sri Lanka could use to make its way out of its current plight. A renowned rap musician in the United States named Aloe Black arrived in Sri Lanka recently. He told me that Sri Lanka's champagne is Ceylon cinnamon. Cinnamon isn't found anywhere else in the world. Cassia is but a mere substitute for it. If we fail to set up an entrepreneurial state, cinnamon farmers, peelers, collectors and exporters might be satisfied with where they are right now, but they will never be able to advance further. If you want to taste the flavors of potential profits in this industry, you must look at cinnamon with an entrepreneurial mindset. All nations that developed themselves got there by embracing the concept of an entrepreneurial state. We will save all rural folk from traditional politics and empower them. We will proliferate entrepreneurship within the grassroots. Our aim is to empower rural folk such that they will be incentivized to at least start up a primitive cinnamon-related business. We want to do politics with such empowered people. We don't want to engage in the kind of politics that pushes a person from bad to worse. Meanwhile, several candidates expecting to contest the local government election under the banner of the Sarvajana Balaya signed their respective nomination papers today. Deposits have been placed for all 337 local government authorities. Sarvajana Balaya's contestants, expecting to run for office in those 337 local government councils, signed their nomination papers today. From tomorrow onwards up until the 20th, leaders of the relevant districts will hand over the signed nomination papers to the relevant authorities.
Welcome back. You're joining Derana, Sri Lanka's most trusted news source. Now, in your business news, according to the latest data issued by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, the country earned over $367 million from tourism in February. Meanwhile, the island nation also recorded over 97,000 tourist arrivals within the first 13 days of the month.
In its weekly economic indicators, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka noted that $367.6 million were earned through tourism during the second month of this year, an increase from $345.7 million recorded in February 2024. The total earnings from the first 2 months of the year stood at $768.2 million, marking an 11.7% increase compared to the corresponding period in 2024. Meanwhile, according to the latest statistics from the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority, 97,322 tourist arrivals were recorded between the 1st and the 12th of March this year. India claimed the top spot among the source markets with 14,848 tourists visiting the country, while the Russian Federation secured second place with 13,217 tourists arriving between the 1st and the 13th of March. A significant number of tourist arrivals were also reported from the United Kingdom, France, China and the United States.
Now, in other business news, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Employment and Tourism Vijitha Herath urged the public to contact the 1989 hotline for reliable information about private employment agencies when seeking employment opportunities abroad.
The minister made this statement while responding to questions raised by members of parliament during the Ministerial Consultative Committee on Foreign Affairs, Foreign Employment and Tourism held in parliament recently. The officials informed the committee that all information regarding the agencies and fees approved by the Sri Lanka Bureau of Foreign Employment can be found on the official website, and that if any party charges more than the approved amount or engages in any process without a license, a complaint can be filed with the Bureau. The MPs who participated in the Ministerial Consultative Committee pointed out that Sri Lankans living in Russia are being used for military operations in the country and that they are being treated in a very inhumane manner. Former Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy, claims that the decision to issue ISBs in 2019 was aimed at building foreign reserves and providing the newly elected government additional time, since there were indications that the new government might deviate from the IMF agreement signed in 2016. He further emphasized that had the central bank not issued ISBs at the time, Sri Lanka would have defaulted much earlier.
ඔබතුමා මහා බැංකු අධිපතිවරයා ලෙස ඉන්නකොට ISBs වලින් වැඩිම ණය ප්‍රමාණයක් ගත්තා කියලා චෝදනාවක් තියෙනවා.
I think ISBs went up from 5 billion at the beginning of 2015 to I think 15 billion by end of 2019. So there was a 10 billion increase in the ISBs outstanding. Of that 10 billion, 5 billion was accounted for by switching of instrument, because in 2015 3.5 billion of portfolio investment was in the rupee security. Those flows were reduced from 3.5 billion down to 600 million by the end of 2019. And the swaps, which were about 2.5 billion at the beginning of 2015, were reduced to 500 million. So 5 billion of the increase in ISBs was due to expenditure switching, because one of the objectives was to increase the maturity and reduce the cost of our external borrowing. So by going from portfolio investment rupee security, at that time it was about 12%, to ISBs, which were around 6-7%, there was an improvement in cost. And going from highly volatile flows of portfolio inflows to 5 and 10-year maturity ISBs increased the stability of the flows as well. Of the 10 billion increase, 5 billion was due to this switching of instruments. The second thing to say is that 4 billion that was raised in 2019, practice was to have one issuance, usually at the beginning of the year, somewhere around February, March, and we used to raise about 2.5 billion. So that was successfully completed in March. Then we had the Easter bombing, and it was clear as night follows day that the government was going to change. It was also clear that the incoming government and the people who were going to be doing economic policy in that government were likely to change policy significantly. My own thinking at the time was the IMF program will be discontinued. We may have difficulty in retaining our access to capital markets. We were told by our advisors that the markets were willing to give us some more money, mainly because at that time we had passed the Active Liability Management Act, we had published the medium-term debt management strategy, and the National Export Strategy was published. All those things had been put out as to explain how we were going to manage the situation. So we took the money to build up our reserves so that even if there was a reversal in policy, as there was, we would have a bit of a buffer and give the government a bit more time to go back to the IMF. We thought they would leave the IMF. We thought that would be the wrong policy and that it would lead to a loss of reserves eventually, but we gave a bit more time for the government to switch course. So if we hadn't continued to issue ISBs and borrow, as I said, we would have, I think, defaulted much earlier, because we were literally borrowing to repay the debt.
That's all the news we have for you tonight. For further updates, stay in touch with Ada Derana, the nation's most trusted news source. Thank you. Have a great night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit adaderana.lk.